I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you take a roll call for us, please, City Clerk Domingo?
Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Reed. Jackson.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Ledoux.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Snyder.
Here. Very good. I have a motion to approve of the agenda. Consent. Any additions, corrections? City Clerk Domingo?
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Ledoux.
Yes.
Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Snyder.
Yes. All right, so we will begin this evening with a few presentations. Hopefully we have our interim college president, Joe Calvaruso, on. You see him on? Okay. Joe, can you hear us?
I'm assuming. Oh.
Hi there, I'm here now, I think.
Hi, good evening. All right,
Good
so the
evening.
floor is yours.
Sorry about that, Mayor.
That's okay. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you. It's nice to be at top of the agenda. I'm Joe Calvaruso, the interim president at Albion College. I took office December 24th. Was born and raised in Albion, third generation on my dad's side, the sixth generation on my mother's side from the Albion area. It's great to be back, graduate of Albion High School in 74, graduate of Albion College 78. Spent 29 years in the banking industry. Then I became executive director of President Ford's Foundation for 12 years. So it's great to be back in the Albion community and looking forward to working with you folks on any issues you may have or projects we come across with each other. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions for our interim president? Yes, Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, well, good evening. I have been waiting for a while to talk to you. I had made an appointment to see you, but it was canceled because you said you would be here tonight. So I think I'll bring some of my concerns to you tonight. I am Marcola Lawler, the 4th Precinct Councilperson. You'll probably have a couple emails from me every now and then. I tend not to bother people a lot, but when I do, it's definitely a concern. At this time, what I wanted to know was a couple things about last time that I talked to you. I can't see your face, so I'm not sure if I'm talking to the right person. But I truly believe it was you. I asked about, did you support some of the visions that were being presented before the city of Albion? And so one in particular that I'm concerned about is the housing in a couple areas of 4th Precinct. Will that still be moving forward? Will projects be moving forward as far as the Washington Gardner Body and Soul Center? And does Albion College have any interest in helping with the school as far as helping the children at Harrington?
Yeah, I'll just kind of run through them real quick if I can. I call it the old bank building downtown. We're moving into the first floor as we speak. The first floor is done and we're going to take occupancy there. That is being operated. What we call is AC3. That's for businesses that need help and internship programs for us, but if you need projections for your business, that'd be an organization that could help. That project is done on the first floor. The second floor, we haven't started. That's going to be a future incubator for potential businesses that are startup that need a place to operate from. Washington Gardner, we're in the assessment stage. We're doing an assessment proposal by an independent third party to retake a look at that. As we're all aware, construction costs have rocketed in the last year, so we're taking a good look at that one. The Unity Hall, the St. John, the church, not too far from there. We're going to be starting fundraising for that project. The windows are going in as we speak. The roof is done. So we're going to retake a look at that project with some fundraising to get it completed. I think it's a beautiful facility. The acoustics are great. And you said something about housing, and I'm not for sure. I don't want to misquote, but what housing were you looking at in the 4th district?
I was told that the college will be buying a couple houses and putting them in different places, not just in one specific place. So I was just wondering, is that project still moving forward? I just know a lot of people that are looking for housing, and I know that the college has purchased some, so I was just wondering, is that project still gonna move forward, and will it still range from at least 125,000 is what was what was told to me, and you can correct me on any of these things because it would be very helpful if you do, if I'm wrong. So I'm very receptive to correction, and I just want to be right. So I'm just trying to gather some information that was presented to me from a couple of my constituents in 4th precinct and people that are really in need of housing. They really want to get out of HUD subsidized housing, and they really want to try to get on their own to purchase housing, which they do feel like $200,000 and $300,000 houses are a bit much for them. But if the range that the college was thinking about was it still 125,000? And like I said, will this project still be moving forward as far as putting housing throughout the community?
Yeah, right now we do not have plans to start building single unit housing. We're focusing on our projects on the campus, so we do not have plans in the near future to do single unit housing in Albion.
Do we have,
Appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem.
do we have any other questions for our interim president? Well, Joe, we appreciate you being on with us this evening for the brief introduction. I know you're doing your best to get in touch with folks throughout the community, but we also know that you have a great deal to deal with on campus as well. So we appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your evening to be with us and to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mayor and council people. Thank you.
Welcome. You have a good night.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, we have our proclamation for Black History Month. So I will go ahead and read that. Proclamation recognizing February 2022 as Black History Month. Whereas Black History Month was created in 1926 in the United States when historian Dr. Carter Woodson was inspired by his father's teaching that learning to accept insult, to compromise on principle, to mislead your fellow man, or to betray your people is to lose your soul. And whereas Dr. Woodson believed Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of biography and history. And whereas Black History Month affords a special opportunity to become more knowledgeable about Black heritage and to honor the many Black leaders who have contributed to the progress of our nation. And whereas such knowledge can strengthen the insight of all of our citizens regarding the issues of human rights, the great strides that have been made in the crusade to eliminate the barriers of equality for minority groups, and the continuing struggle against racial discrimination and poverty. And whereas Albion can count among its past and present citizens many prominent African-American leaders, educators, patriots, and social justice pioneers, including Dr. Daniel Bogan Jr., Geraldine and Harry Bonner Sr., Betty Branch, Reverend Robert Brown, Tillman Cornelius, Arthur and Vivian Davis, Robert and Mayola Dunklin, Ron Gant, Barbara Gladney, Robert Holland, Dr. Ruth Holland, Charles Bucky Jones, Pastor Charles Jones, Hazel Elias, James McIntosh, Dr. Cheryl Mitchell, Reverend Kenneth Pons, Pastor Donald Phillips, and Dr. Talea Phillips, Len Reed, Vera Simpson, Dr. Dolores Smiley, Charles Snyder, Joyce Spicer, Calvin Wheeler, and Eddie Williams. Now therefore, I, Victoria Garcia Snyder, Mayor of Albion, do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Black History Month in the city of Albion, and urge all residents of Albion to join in making this period of rededication to the principles of justice and equality for all people. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city be affixed. Next, we have Chief Kipp, who is here to present his 2022 annual report. Chief Kipp.
Actually, 2021.
2021.
Thank you all for allowing me to speak with you tonight. Give Jill a second to share the screen. The bottom one. Yeah.
Who has close?
Yeah. Well, I gave everyone these slides, so if you can't read what's on the screen, it should be right in front of you as well. I added a couple graphs that weren't in the actual report that was in your package, so just so I could better clarify some things. But this shows our organizational chart for the department. As you can see down at the bottom, we have a lot of openings right now, 5 to be exact. There's the 2 people down on the bottom right in the yellow or gold color there are the 2 people that are in our police academy right now. They started on January 6th. So they would fill 2 of those open spots that are down there. But we still have 3 openings right now that we're hoping to fill. We had a 3rd person that was planning to attend the academy, but she was involved in an automobile accident right before the academy and actually broke her back and has to have surgery on her back now. So she's still on the hook for wanting to work here. I just talked to her today and she's still excited about it. So hopefully she can get her back taken care of and possibly start the next police academy in May or the one after that in August. So, but staffing has been difficult over the last couple of years. This last year in particular, everybody's hiring people. Normally, when we've sent people to the police academy, there's been 1 or 2 people in the academy that were sponsored out of about 20 to 30 people. The academy that our 2 guys are in right now has 3 people that are not sponsored. And those 3 people are already spoken for by another department. And so the police academies that are going on right now don't have any available officers when they graduate. to come work for us. And so it's a really strange time that we're in because it doesn't happen very often, but so we don't have, there's nobody, there's of the academies that are out there right now, there's nobody that's going to graduate in May that's available to be hired because they've already got a job. So. This slide shows the training that we've done in 2021. As you can see, we have 1,519 hours, 19 and a half hours of training total for the department. If you consider we were down 4 people most of the year, that's 15 total officers. So it's about 100 hours of training for each officer per year. Now, obviously, there are officers that go to more training and some go to less training on average, but it's 100 hours of training per officer is a lot of training in a year for those officers. So we're doing the best we can to get the best training we can for the officers. You do see in the fire training, oops, go back just 1 second. That's right, just that's fine. They can see it. The fire training shows it's over 500 hours of fire training. I could probably break the fire training down like we do the police training, where I could list it in groups of things that we do, but it's about 1/3 of our training that we do is in fire training. So this shows our call types. Now I can't see the whole screen, so it's fine. The total calls on the far right is everything that is run through dispatch. Those are the dispatch calls that we have. The service calls would be calls that are generally not a criminal type call. And so that would be the difference between the other 5 graphs there and the total calls would be the service calls, basically, if that makes any sense to you. But we write about 1,220 criminal complaints. So you can see out of the total calls that we go on, very few of those are actually criminal complaints that we deal with. So.
Keith, I had a question about this graph.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, feel free to stop me in the middle of it anytime you want. It's probably easier to ask questions. That's great.
But he had a question too. So I was just curious, are the reports and the calls the same? Are those similar things? When it says total reports written, I was just curious the distinction between the report and the call.
Right, we don't write reports on every call that we go on. We go on a lot of things that would require, like we'll unlock a car or
What
something like that.
requires the report?
So criminal complaints all require reports.
Okay.
So that's your 3rd column over, all your criminal complaints.
Okay.
And then all other reports would be reports that we write things on, like we might go on a mental health call that the officer might feel it needs to be documented, or somebody will have some type of problem that might arise to a criminal complaint eventually, so we'll document that as a report. But the total reports will be columns 3 and 4 added together, basically.
Yeah, got it.
So.
Thank you.
And we thought about keeping track of mental health
I'm
calls.
gonna do that this year. I'm working on that. We were actually having this discussion at the last staff meeting. We have a general non-criminal report thing that we do, and those kind of fall into there. And so I can't really separate them out without going report by report by report to figure that out. And so we're gonna add some columns that we can put in there so that for mental health calls and mental health transports and those type of things, so we have a better idea of what we're doing with those. All right, we're going to go on to the next one. So these are our dispatch calls over the last 4 years. You can see that the blue columns are self-initiated. So this is something that the officer sees and deals with it. Most of those, when I get to this next few pages, you'll see our traffic stops. So almost all the traffic stops that we do, I think we did about 1,700 traffic stops last year. That's a self-initiated activity of an officer. The other ones are things that they come across while they're working, or they'll go on, they'll be talking to somebody on it being some type of criminal complaint, so they'll ask to pull a number for that. But things that the officer does on their own. The next column is the just service calls that we go on, which would be the minus the reports, basically. So those are the calls where we're actually just assisting somebody with something. It's not a criminal matter. And then obviously the last column is the total calls that we get from dispatch. And as you can see, that holds pretty steady. But the one thing I want to point out is, it's going to be 2 pages down and I can't flip back easy, but I'll explain to it when I get there. Or no, on the back side. Next one. Yeah. So medical calls have changed a lot, as you can see, over the last 4 years. In 2018, we ran 637 medical calls, 584. and then it goes down to 139 in 2020, and then just 26 last year. So when COVID came on, prior to that, we've always run priority one medical ever since we went to central dispatch in 2010. So a priority one medical is anything that you basically with an ambulance call for lights and sirens. So if somebody says they're having trouble breathing, it's a priority one call for the ambulance. And all of that time, we are not medically trained to deal with anything other than emergency first aid and CPR. And so we were going on all these medical calls and just standing there waiting for the ambulance to show up because there was nothing we could do. We can't help somebody who's just having trouble breathing or any of the number of medical things that ambulances go on. And so when COVID came around, we decided that we would stop going on priority one medical calls because I didn't need my officers standing in people's houses where they possibly could have COVID and be sick, just waiting for an ambulance to show up. And so that's where the decrease came in 2020 down to 139. We were obviously running those up until about March or so, which we had quite a few to begin with, but then it went down. And then last year is just 26. And so now when I had discussions and we talked about doing this prior to COVID coming on, but dispatch always told me they couldn't distinguish between somebody who needed emergency CPR and just a priority one medical. You either had to do priority one medicals, they couldn't do the other. Well, golly gee, now they send us on all these CPR calls. Whenever anybody needs CPR, we go on, and we had 26 of those last year. And sometimes, occasionally, I shouldn't say we had 26, but some of those an ambulance might request that we go on something more serious because they're coming from Marshall or coming from further away. So some of those might be that as well. It might not be CPR, but now we only go on medical calls when it's a real emergency that the officers can actually do something. And so that's the big change in that. But if you go back to the dispatch calls, there's a big difference between 8,406 in 2018 and 8,404 in 2021. When you take out the fact that we are going to over 600 medical calls now. So our calls for service are actually up that are non-medical, if that makes any sense what I'm explaining. So it looks pretty even, but when you cut out all those medicals from those 2 years from 2018 and 2019, the calls are actually up. So we're actually up calls. If you added all those medicals back in there, we'd be 600 more calls or so per year. So.
Chief, can I just make sure I understood that?
Mhm.
So when you were saying you're only calling on real emergencies,
Mhm.
but you're also called for CPR, I just wanted to make sure CPR obviously is an emergency.
Well, there are sometimes they call us for a serious emergency because they're coming from a long ways away and want us to go see if we can stabilize the patient.
Okay,
Generally, that's going to involve CPR, but occasionally it's something that's a different type of emergency other than
Okay.
CPR is all
Okay.
what I was
so
trying to say. But
like the 26 from last year would be those.
yeah, they're major emergencies, usually CPR or something serious that the ambulance would like us to stand by for them.
Okay,
Occasionally we get to call just to stand by depending on where they're going, because it might have been something the dispatcher said that concerned them, they wanted an officer there or something.
is that instance considered a priority 3,
There'll be priority 1. Priority 3 would be non-emergency.
non-emergency?
Yeah.
Got it.
And priority 3s, usually they ask us, because those would be a lot of times our lift assist, where the 2 medics can't pick up a person because they're too heavy, so they ask officers to come assist them with that. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, on to the next one. I added this one in, this wasn't in the other one, but I just wanted to give everyone an idea of what we did as far as assisting other agencies, and usually that's the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department. Occasionally the state police might call us to back them up on something. But these are the instances where we leave the city usually to go back up another agency on a call. The vast majority of those are for the Sheriff's Department just outside the city limits. But there's occasions that we've gone to Battle Creek to back them up on emergencies before. Once or twice, not very often. Sometimes we run down to Homer to back an officer up down at Homer, but again, that's for the Sheriff's Department. So, but I just wanted to give you an idea how many times we run outside the city to assist them on different calls. And that stays pretty steady. That 186 looks like a big drop, but I think it's the way the graph shows up, the numbers aren't that far apart. So. And this is another one that I added in off of the let's see, it's not the original report that I gave you, but I wanted to give you an idea of some of the non-criminal complaints that we go on, and just to see the numbers of things that we go on. The ones that really surprise me are when you get to the check area, check premise, check subject, check vehicle. I mean, we go on a lot of calls where people are just saying, hey, there's a strange person walking around my neighborhood or something like that. And we really have done a lot of training and discussion about how we respond to these. And we don't always confront people anymore. It used to be we'd always go ask them what they're doing, but we've been really concerned about racism and how that's affected by people calling, making sure that somebody's not just calling us because there's a African-American gentleman walking through their neighborhood, and that, and so we're very careful when we go on these calls that we will drive through just to see or so forth, but if we don't have any other reason to stop a person, we generally won't stop people just because somebody thinks they look suspicious walking around their neighborhood. And then I added some things in there like juvenile trouble, noise complaints, overdoses, the next one on there. We don't go on a lot of overdoses, and that's stayed pretty steady. I actually expected it to be a bigger decrease in overdoses than I thought before, because we've carried Narcan for quite a while now, but now it's available publicly. And so a lot of these people that are using heroin are carrying their own Narcan, or somebody is. And so we don't get called on these calls like we used to as much. But it's still staying pretty steady for the community. But I would say that that doesn't represent the overdoses that we truly have in this community. And I would say there's definitely more than what's shown in those numbers.
Do you guys have a lot of instances of fentanyl in the community?
We've seen it a couple times, but not a lot. And sometimes it's hard for us to detect with the stuff that we have to detect what it is. A lot of times when we go on these overdoses like that, we don't find any drugs. The friends of them have already taken it, or they don't have it where we can find it, and we don't really have a cause to really search for it with the way the laws are written right now, because basically if you call for somebody who's having an overdose, there's no crime involved, and we have to provide care, which I think is great. But it doesn't allow us to investigate the actual crime part of it at that point. So, and then I added like peace officer in there, suicidal subjects. We go on a lot more of those than people realize. And then most of those are like unwanted person welfare checks are all kind of the same type of thing. It's just somebody wants to check on something. So, and the 911 hang up calls, those are obviously calls where the person never says anything to dispatch, but they know where it is. And we go on quite a few of those as well. But you can see where a lot of that 5,000 or whatever it was service calls that we go on come from, just by looking at these. All right. On to the real stuff. So crimes for the FBI are divided up into index crimes and non-index crimes. Basically, the index crimes are violent crimes and the non-index crimes are non-violent crimes. And so they're grouped together in a funny way when it goes to the FBI, and this isn't necessarily the way I would do it, but I decided to do it in the presentation that they give. When you look across the numbers over a 4-year period of time, there's not a lot of difference in crime in the community. There's a few places it jumps up and down a little bit. The burglaries in particular, going from 83 to 53 and then back up to 65 is quite a jump, but everything else over a 4-year period of time has stayed completely steady. For 2021, it does show 1 homicide for last year. That was ruled justifiable homicide by the prosecutor, so it's not technically a homicide, but it still goes on our report as a homicide. So it was a fight between 2 brothers, and one of them ended up dying as a result of it, but it was determined that it was self-defense. So. Any questions about that? When we go on to the non-index crimes, obviously you can see this is the majority of what we go on. The other assaults is probably the biggest thing that we deal with in the community.
What would that be? That's other assault.
Simple assault.
Simple assault. Yeah. So under the index crimes, you have aggravated assault. So that would be anything where it causes bodily injury, which usually results in hospitalization, or felonious assault where you point a gun at somebody or use a weapon against somebody. Those are the aggravated assaults. And I was going to point out too in that page is the larceny and theft. So the 2 biggest crimes that you can see that we have in the community are larceny and theft. And then, you jumped ahead. And then the assaultive crimes are the other assaultive type crimes are the other things. And so the assaultive crimes are usually simple assault or domestic violence. A lot of those are domestic violence as well. And that's the one thing that I didn't add to the non-criminal complaints we go on, but we go on a tremendous number of civil domestics, as we call them, where there's no actual assault, but people were arguing and we get called to that. Usually, sometimes there could have been an assault. It's hard to get that information out when people don't want to share or don't want to tell us what really happened. Unless we see actual signs of some type of violence, those all go in as just a civil domestic call. And between that and the actual domestic calls, that's probably by far the most what we deal with. Any questions about those? So on to traffic enforcement, as you can see in 2021, I decided that we needed to do more traffic enforcement, and we did more traffic enforcement. Not quite as much as I was hoping for. I was actually expecting quite a bit more than that, but I was pleased with the results. We did have a lot of complaints last year about speeding in places, and as you can see, the officers really got out there and did a lot of work last year. With the total traffic stops of being 1,756, I thought was pretty good. I was hoping in over 2,000, but we didn't quite get there, but we're working on it this year. But again, being short, we have 2 officers on most of the time. If you go back and you look at staffing, we're down 5 officers. If I go back to that page of showing the organizational chart, one of my sergeants fell during the snowstorm the other night and broke his elbow. And so I've got 1 more person out. That was on the one shift that I had only 2 people working on. So now we've got to move somebody to that shift, which means I've got 2 shifts now with only 2 people working on it, and so being short, when you lose 1 person, it messes up the whole schedule and it can be really a pain. So, and he's out about 6 weeks now. So, it's just, we're getting by fine being short staffed, but when 1 person gets sick or 1 person gets hurt and is going to be out for a period of time, it's really a strain on the department at that point. And over the winter, you probably noticed this in the weekly logs that I send out. There's not as many pages. We're slower in the winter time, and there's a lot more activity in the summertime, which is very typical for any department. And so with the 2 new people that we've just hired, they'll be out of police academy in May, but they'll go into field training at that point, and they won't get done with field training until September, October. So they'll be riding with another officer, and that doesn't count as 2 officers. That's just 1 officer because the other person is training them and watching them and evaluating them. And so I don't have those 2 extra people. And so for starting in about May, we're going to pull our detective and put them back on the road to cover the road, which shortens us up on being able to do investigations. And they've been really tied up with the investigations that we have going on right now, which is going to be, again, hard on us, but that's the only way I can cover the shifts and make sure we've got good enough staffing for nights and weekends and kind of things like that. So, but hopefully we're getting there and we're going to find some good people, and we're interviewing a few now. So then going on to the next page, after traffic enforcement, is our accidents. And I was pleased when I put these numbers together. I didn't quite expect this, but when you look at the big increase in traffic enforcement with vehicle crashes, you see a big decrease in vehicle crashes. And that is the main point of doing traffic enforcement, is to decrease vehicle crashes. And if you don't think it works, all you gotta do is look at these numbers and go, oh, wow, it does work. And so I think some of the traffic enforcement we did last year did make a big difference. I'm really hoping to see bigger numbers on traffic enforcement and also better numbers on vehicle crashes next year as well. So, then the last couple here are the fire side of what we do. You can see we've been down a little bit in our actual total fire calls the last couple of years. Obviously, we went back up a little bit last year. Some of that varies, and I'll explain that here in a minute when we get to the next slide. And you can see some of that. But in general, structure fires, 17, 9, 8, 14 over the last 4 years, they stay pretty generally in that area. We usually say we have about 10 structure fires a year, if anybody asks. Obviously, it's up a little bit from those 2 years, but that doesn't change much, and it hasn't changed much since I've worked here. Actually, I think it's probably down a little bit from back when I first started working here, because we were much busier with more people. But any questions about any of those?
I'm curious about the good intent calls.
Yeah, I was looking at that today and I was like, what is that? Yeah, it's usually when somebody thinks there was a fire, but there wasn't a fire. A good example of that, we had a call of a reported structure fire one night behind McDonald's. And then the caller explained a little further that they could see it in the distance, and what they were actually seeing was the glow of the Anderson's ethanol plant and the smoke going up,
Yeah.
thinking that was a fire. And so that would be a good intent call. There was a good intent that there was a fire, but there really wasn't a fire. So we get quite a few of those a year. We get other ones where somebody's having a bonfire in their backyard and somebody look out their window and think their garage is on fire. And so we'll respond up there and it'll be somebody with a campfire in their backyard. So those are good intent calls. They meant well, but a little more investigation.
Yeah.
So the last page here for these are our mutual aid responses. And you can see it comes and goes over the years. In 2018, we had a lot both ways. And then going into last year, we had a little on our end and a lot on their end, or yeah, in last year. One of the things that we did different from 2018, 19, and 20 compared to 21 is we had a mutual aid, automatic mutual aid agreement with Sheridan Township that we ended at the beginning of last year, mainly because they had approached us about paying for the mutual aid because they were coming here so often. As you look in 2020, they came here 9 times and we went to theirs 1 time. And so they wanted some compensation for that. The reality of that is because of this automatic mutual aid and the way dispatch dispatches things. If dispatch gets a call that there's a smell of smoke in a house, they'll do that as a occupied structure fire because somebody's calling and they're in the house. And the mutual aid was supposed to be only for occupied structure fires. Well, in our world, an occupied structure fire would be a fire that the building's actually on fire and people are in it that can't get out. And so we need as many people to get there as fast as we can to get the people out. Maple Grove would have been a good example of that when that burned years ago. That was an occupied structure fire. We had people in it we rescued out of the building. That rarely happens. But the way dispatch dispatches occupied structure fires, we were having all these calls that we didn't need mutual aid for. Matter of fact, we didn't even need an all call for us. Our guys could handle it on shift. And so we ended the automatic mutual aid and we just called mutual aid now when we need it. And that made the big difference in the 8 to 3 from last year. Sheridan actually had quite a few more structure fires. So we responded quite a few times to them where we didn't have the structure fires that we needed assistance with. When Lopez's burned, that would have been an automatic mutual aid when that happened, but I was right here in my office, got down there, and it was a small fire, we put out ourselves and didn't call for assistance. So we're just making those judgment calls now, so we're just making it automatic. So that's the big difference in mutual aid currently.
Okay, do we have any questions for Chief Kipp? Yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Do you have any suggestions, as far as parking, like, say family member might come over and spend overnight or maybe a couple days? Do you have any suggestion that they could do to prohibit them from getting a ticket? They can't stay on the street.
For overnight parking like that, you can always call dispatch and request permission to park overnight. We give permission all the time for overnight parking on the street. That's not a problem. The only time that's a problem is obviously when they've got to clear the streets or things like that.
Okay.
But generally speaking, you can ask for permission. We won't give it from within a day or two. Generally, usually it's when you've got a guest over or you're having work done to your driveway or something like that. The only place I won't give permission to park is up at the college because we have enough problem with that already. So.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank
Councilwoman.
you, Mayor Senator. Just following up from that question, if someone parked their car along their house or on their property, is that something that warrants a ticket as well?
So if you draw a line down the front of your house, anything in front of that that's not on an improved surface would be considered front yard parking.
And that's illegal,
Yes.
right?
If you're beside your house, then it's not illegal. Unless you're on a corner lot, and then the corner lot's the same as the front lot. You draw a line down the side of the house and anything from between that and the road would be front yard parking.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but if you're past the front edge of your house, then it's not front yard parking and you could park there. Now, there's other rules that come into play over a period of time, but for a day or two or something like that, it wouldn't apply. Same within your backyard. You could park a car in your backyard for a short period of time without question. As long as it's registered and the grass gets mowed under it, it wouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
That's one thing I wanted to include in here this year was parking, but because we've been doing paper tickets, the amount of effort it would have taken to give you a good perception of what we're doing on parking would have taken way longer than this took to put together, and this took plenty of time as it was. My hope is, because you guys have approved us buying this new parking ticket program, which I'm still waiting to put into service because the company just hasn't gotten there yet. Once that's in service, we'll be able to keep all those records, and I can give you those numbers just as easily on how many tickets we're writing and how much money we're bringing in and all that kind of stuff.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
I actually,
Oh, go ahead.
when that happens, are you gonna make an announcement? So,
I can let you know when it goes into service.
Yeah.
I mean, it really won't change our operations other than the officers, how they're doing it.
right, I mean,
What
but,
it will do is give me a good record of what we're doing instead of having to count pieces of paper,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, and hopefully, I mean, I would assume you'll be able to take in more people.
Yeah.
but-
Well, there's a perception that we don't do a lot of ticketing. The reality is that's not true. It's because people assume we write a ticket, the car won't park there. That's not the case. The college kids don't care. It's cheaper for us. It's cheaper for them to pay our tickets occasionally than it is to pay a parking pass and park in a parking lot. We bring in annually close to $20,000 in revenue for parking tickets. And 90% of that is 2 to 6 parking at the college. And so those are $20 tickets. You can do the math on how many tickets we write. We write a lot of tickets.
A black shit when I burn the street.
Yeah, and so some people complain that we don't do parking enforcement at the college, we just pick other places. The reality is we allow it everywhere else and we pick on the college. It just doesn't appear that way because it doesn't make them move their car,
And council people do not get special treatment at all. I will testify under oath for that.
Don't call me. I'm not fixing it for you.
Right, thank you. Public comments, do we have anybody on? Right, so we have opportunity for citizens to make public comment on the agenda item only.
Hello.
Go ahead, Garrett, floor is yours.
Okay. 1016 South Spruce Street. Just a quick question, or not question, but a comment regarding the reapportionment. So basically, in the last census, I think Albion has lost a little over 900 people. And I was on the council in 2010 and 2011 when we redrew the lines. And so, and if I remember correctly, at the time, Councilmember Zablewski was in precinct 4, and then he was redistricted, and he ended up in 6, I believe, at the time. But I think the city should look into that. I know the state has a new way of going through that process that's going on right now. I know that the county has gone through that process as well. So I think that that's something that the council should look at. I reached out. I was thinking about this last year, especially with the delays of the census, and I have reached out to the clerk recently. And I know our charter allows for the council, I guess at its discretion, to make the lines more equitable, to make sure that the population is equal in each of the precincts. But I also think that there might be some language in the state law that might require us to do that. So I hopefully there's some clarification brought about that, but that is an important thing. And probably something we probably only do every 10 years. So yeah, so I just hopefully that there's some clarification provided on that, because I do know that we have districted council districts, right? And so I know if everyone was at large, we wouldn't have to do that. But I also feel, just as a side note, in researching this, I noticed, I guess the city is one whole ward. And I think I'm trying to understand why that was created like that. And the last thing I would say is, I think eventually, like I said, when I was on council, I think there needs to be just a full scale look at the charter, because we've been operating under that for, over 60 years. And, but this is one of those areas where I feel it'd be good to update it because there's no clear process for doing that. And the standards, because I know one of the last, is that time?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
What's that?
We'll go ahead and move on to our consent calendar. In your packets, we had the copies of the minutes for our January 18th study session and the January 18th regular meeting. I have a motion to approve.
Second,
Any corrections for me? City Clerk Domingo?
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Reed, Jackson,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lanu,
yes,
Williamson.
Yes.
And Mears.
Yes. First item for discussion is approve council members attending the 2022 CapCon conference. So Councilwoman Renee or City Manager.
Yeah, we're gonna update real quick.
Well, you need them.
It's
so moved.
it's a discussion though, right?
It says approve.
Oh, okay, so we're gonna. Okay.
We're gonna discuss and
Yeah.
approve with
Alright.
So thank you. So Councilmember Lehman brought this to our attention with the recent announcement of the 2022 capital conference, similar to what we did back in September for the MML convention. Just looking if there are any interested council members to attend this. It looks like it is $275 per person. It will take place in Lansing from March 15th through the 16th. I would recommend, obviously it's up to council discretion on who goes, but I would recommend allowing other council members who did not attend the MML convention this fall, maybe give them an opportunity to attend the capital conference. But again, that is at the will of the council. So we are just looking to whoever is interested in the attending this event, and then myself or our clerk Domingo, we will make sure that you all get registered so you are able to attend.
So do we have anybody who hasn't attended a conference this year that would like to go to this one?
I did, yeah.
So anybody else interested in attending? We got Councilman Williamson, Mayor Pro Tem Jackson, Councilman Reed. So do we have a budget for this? Or is there?
I do, I believe, in the council budget, we budgeted $2,000 for trainings. So there should be plenty for you all to attend this, and obviously if you need to make amendment to increase that amount, we can do that throughout the year.
So do we have to vote on the approval for all of these council members to go? All right. Do we have any discussion before we take a vote? All right, so we're taking a vote.
So you have Lanu, Williamson, Jackson.
Yep.
Okay. Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Reed, Jackson,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lanu,
Yes,
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Snyder.
Yes. You guys have been said.
I was just gonna say to reserve, clerk Domingo's voice.
Okay, so that sounds good. All right, next item, we have the approval of the engagement letter for the Curcio law firm.
Councilmember Reed has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman.
So how many was approved to go? Is it one? Four.
So you and. Motion to approve the engagement for the Curcio law firm. Support.
Support.
So is this, Colin, were you gonna?
Sure, yeah, so this is just a shorthand engagement letter that Mr. Curcio sent over. Ordinarily, we would bring this to you before he did his presentation, but unfortunately, we weren't able to get confirmation that he'd be able to do it until after the window had closed. But as you can see, he's charging us a very nominal fee for putting together the presentation. So I just recommend approval. He was very willing to accommodate the city schedule, and I'm appreciative of that.
Do we have any questions for our attorney?
I, more so just a technical question, the council doesn't have to approve a fee at this level, do we?
It's not the fee that you have to approve, it's
The
technically
relationship.
he's special legal counsel
Okay.
doing a presentation, so what I told the city manager is I'd rather err on the side of caution, just have counsel sign off on it, because our charter says that technically when we retain special legal counsel, the council should approve it.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay. The next item is the approval of body camera and in-car cameras. There's a motion to approve.
Support.
Chief Kipp?
So our department started using body cameras, I think it was 2015. We were the first department in the county to use body cameras. One of the things that I'm proud of, that we were ahead of the curve on most of that. There are still agencies like the Michigan State Police who don't have body cameras. The body cameras that we get are from a company called Provision, which is from the Grand Rapids area. I like to buy Michigan things when I can buy Michigan things, and I've been pretty pleased with the equipment that they've given us. The first set of body cameras we got in 2015 cost $300 a camera. And so we get 19 of those, one for each officer, including myself. We upgraded those in 2018 and 2019 to their version 2. And so they now have a version 3 out. We bought 3 of those cameras last year. And the version 3 cameras now are, maybe they're version 4, I don't remember what they are, but they're almost $600 a piece. And so the price on them has gone up dramatically, but I'll explain some of the features that will be very beneficial for us, which would explain the increase in cost. When you start talking about the in-car cameras, we got a JAG grant back in 2012 because we were still eligible for JAG grants back then. We no longer are since that time. And we bought some new in-car cameras back in 2012, along with a new downloading system where we store the video. The bad part about the in-car camera system that we have now, it's through Mobile Vision. We've had Mobile Vision cameras ever since I started working here. Originally, they were VHS cassettes that we stuck in the back of the car. We had 2 cassettes that were in the car each night. We'd switch them around every 6 hours because you could record continuously for 6 hours. And then we got into the digital ones about 2006, I think it was, or 2007. There's been 3 versions of those. We've got the latest version, which I bought, I think about 4 years ago through eBay. They were used, but they're dying on us now because they were used. And the biggest problem that we have, the 2 cars that were involved in our pursuit to Battle Creek just before Christmas that resulted in the death of the gentleman, both those cars have a blurry camera. They won't focus. And so you can see what's happening, but it's not clear. And that can be an issue depending on what the officer is doing. And so we're at a point now with real old in-car cameras and then the need to upgrade the mobile or the body cameras once again. I was going to do this over time. I had planned on buying 1 in-car camera for the new car that we bought last year, but just got here. And I was going to buy a new one for the car that came this year. The body cameras, like I said, I bought 3 last year. I was going to buy 3 more this year, that kind of thing. But there's a big change in the cameras now. So we're going to switch from the Mobile Vision cameras to the Provision in-car cameras that go along with the body cameras. The nice part about this is the cameras in the cars activate when you turn the overhead emergency lights on or you turn the siren on. But if we're using these new body cameras they will also activate the body camera by doing that. So when the in-car camera comes on, the body camera comes on. Same instance, if there was another officer in this room or up here near me and had their body camera on, my body camera would automatically come on. So if I forget to turn my body camera on and another officer turns theirs on, my body camera automatically comes on. We're both in the same area. So it gives some help in instances where officers might forget to turn the camera on. And when you're in a stressful situation, that happens. That happened in our chase to Battle Creek. The two officers that were involved in the chase didn't turn their body cameras on until after the shooting. I was not happy about that. Those officers were disciplined as a result of not turning body cameras on because we have a policy that requires them to do that. But you're caught up in the heat of the moment. Somebody's shooting at you. Things get forgotten. Had they had these cameras, when they activated the emergency lights for the chase, the body camera would come on, the in-car camera would come on. It would all You tell me I'm done. And so that new technology is a result of the increase in price, but I think it's well worth the cost of these cameras to have this functionality where it will help in those emergency situations where the officers turn the lights on, that those cameras automatically come on. Now, my little concern on that is they get used to that happening, they forget to turn them on at other times, but hopefully it's not in an emergency type situation like this last one, which is, you know, the last time you don't want to have that camera on. And the officers love the cameras, they want the cameras, they know the cameras protect them from what's happening so people can see what's going on. But I just think this is a good chance to upgrade. Like I said, this wasn't my intent to do it all at one time, but we did just get all this forfeiture money and we have the money. I think it's the time to get the equipment that we need to have the good equipment that the officers, you know, to protect the officers and to protect the community and to protect the city from liability as well. So I just think it's a good time to make this purchase. To give you an example on this too, a lot of departments go with Axon, which is the same company that makes tasers. And they have a whole system where they categorize everything online and so forth. And there's a couple other companies that do this. We actually store the video ourselves. We buy what is called an NAS server. The one that we have currently holds, I think 16 terabytes of video, which I can get over 2 years of video on 16 terabytes. We're going to upgrade that for, I think it's right around $2,000 to upgrade it. And I'll be able to hold 96 terabytes of video, which is where all this in-car video camera will go on and all this. Currently, we hold in-car video cameras for 30 days. That's all the storage space we have. My plan is to be able to store this video for 3 years, which is what the recommended requirement is because it gets past any lawsuits that might come along. And so with these cameras and the new storage device, which is not on here because it's already in my budget, we'll have the ability to store the video as long as we need to store the video. Other departments with the systems that they're buying, and I'll give you an example. Battle Creek just spent $750,000 on their body camera system and their in-car system. If we spent per officer the same thing, we'd be close to $200,000 for this. I'm doing it for $23,000. So there's ways to do it a better way. And these cameras are great. We've had great success with them. And so I just wanted to point out how frugal we're being in these costs compared to what other communities are doing and the prices that they're spending on and on the storage in particular of these videos.
Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Please, can you speak to night vision?
So the cameras we previously had night vision on them. These cameras don't have night vision on them. But the preference has been to go away from night vision. Officers don't like night vision, and it gives an improper perception to the people watching the video what the officer could see. And so they preferred to go with the actual, what the camera sees and not have the actual night vision on them. So these don't have night vision.
Is that a good thing or bad thing for us?
It varies. I think it's better to have the perception of what the officer has and what the officer can see than it is to have a perception of something that the officer couldn't see. It gives you a better idea of what was happening. I think that's why they've gone away from it. I don't think there's many cameras that are providing night vision anymore. So it has pretty good video in low light, but it doesn't enhance the light. So.
And so you have this budgeted for the 2 new people as well?
Yeah, we already have 3 cameras and I'm asking for 16, so that'll give us 19 total. So everybody will have their own camera. I haven't actually budgeted for the 5 new people, hopefully.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Sorry, just a procedural thing. I know we're trying to save the clerk's voice and I don't want to interfere with that. But to do that, to change the voice votes, technically you need to suspend the rule requiring roll call votes on anything that's not procedural. So someone would need to move that we suspend the rules to allow for voice votes on the remainder of the items for tonight. Second, vote on that and then continue the agenda.
So moved.
So we have to have a motion
So,
to.
so moved. Some will make the motion.
No, he already did.
Yep, I did.
We're just not support it. Okay. Do we have any comments on that before we take a vote? Do we need to take a roll call vote on that, or can we do that?
No, that's procedural, so that could be, yeah.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Sorry. Trying to keep you out of trouble.
Do we have any questions for Chief Kipp? So the old, you don't have any like deemed old that, like you just, because I know you said you
I have a
purchased.
lot of
some.
old ones.
Huh?
I have a lot of old ones.
Well, what are you gonna do with those?
My hope is to see if there's any other agencies, smaller agencies that might still be interested in them. We've shared a couple with campus safety before. In fact, I was gonna get a hold of Ken and see if he was interested in any of them, so.
Any other questions before we make a vote? All those in favor of approving, vote with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Chief Kipp.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the updated poverty exemption policy and guidelines?
So, support.
Do we have, Mr. Cunningham on, does he?
It's not Mr. Cunningham, but it is Edward Davies, so the same.
I think he's muted. I think you're under that.
So he would need to unmute himself.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. I'm sorry, so we must have caught you in transition,
Yeah.
although we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you.
So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm just here to see if anybody has any questions about the revised policy. Josh just went through the AMAR review, and there was basically a couple of lines in the previous policy because the law changes to the poverty exemption remove the really any discretion that the board of review had. So they have to follow the policies. And so it was important that the policies just stated what the income levels were. I did leave the income level at 110% of the poverty because that's what you had approved before. And then the asset level is at 15,000, which I believe is what was there before. So the new policy is pretty much in line, other than it just removed the items that made the policy not compliant for the AMAR.
Do we have any questions before we vote on this? No, all right. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, well, thank you for staying on for so long to be available.
Oh, that's okay. It was nice taking a break. I've just been moving boxes, so it was nice taking a break. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I have a motion to approve the 2022 Calhoun County Parks Millage allocation.
So moved.
Second.
City Manager Slater?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So at the January 11th, 2022 Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission meeting, the commission approved the following recommendation for the city's 2022 county parks millage allocation, which for 2022, we are set to receive $22,569.68. So their recommendation is to purchase a new mower for the Parks Department. I'm going off the MIDL pricing of $10,992.06. Install, as you're all aware, we installed a new pavilion in Holland Park. However, The current pavilion is not ADA compliant because there is not a pathway that leads up to the pavilion to make it accessible. So they are recommending that we install a walking path to the new Highland Park Pavilion to make it ADA accessible. We are waiting to receive official quotes from the contractor, but with speaking with Director Miller, he estimates that will be between 7,500 with a max up to 10,000. And then they're also recommending that mulch be purchased for Highland Park's playground area at current pricing at $799.20. So total amount to complete the projects is $21,791.26. Again, like last year, Sheridan Township has graciously offered to donate their 2022 allocation amount to the city of Albion. There are no parks within the township, so last year they purchased a new flagpole for Victory Park, and with their 2022 allocation amount, it will go towards upgrading the shuffleboard courts. I do want to give you an update on our 2021 allocation amount. So for 2021, the city received $21,416.56. Council, you guys adopted resolution 2020-43 to authorize the expenditure of up to $10,000 to support repairs and maintenance of the Victory Park tennis and basketball courts. At the February 11th meeting, you guys approved to accept the 2021 allocation and to go towards the maintenance and repair of those parks, and then task Director Miller to get updated estimates on what the actual project cost will be. He reached out to Schweitzer Construction, who provided us with the original estimate throughout the summer. Unfortunately, they promised several times that they would get it to us. We never received one. He then reached out to other contractors and construction companies. However, it was too late in the season where they were all booked, so they were unable to get those projects done. I do want to remind everyone for the blueprint for About Albion, which was the donation that the Albion Community Foundation received last year, which includes 13 main projects. One project being basketball and tennis courts will be upgraded all throughout all city parks, and that has an allocation amount of $100,000. I would recommend that we would allow those funds to go towards updating all of our tennis courts, and that we utilize our 2021 allocation amount to go towards another project. Or as you all can probably just recently submitted our 5-year Parks and Recreation plan to the state of Michigan. Next step with that, now that makes us eligible to apply for DNR grants. With those grants comes a local match is usually required. So if we save our 2021 allocation amount, it will then leave us money to put towards a grant match for a state DNR grant. Or if we identify another park that could happen within our park states, we have additional funds to take advantage of. So I'm just making the recommendation that we support the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission's recommendation to purchase a new mower and install the walking path within Highland Park, and then get new mulch to put around the playground. And that is for a total of $21,791.26. And if you tally out 2021 and 2022, we have $43,986.24. So we will have a good portion left over to again utilize as a local match for a DNR grant or future project. Happy to answer your questions.
Yes, Councilman Lawler.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. You said that the 2022 allocation will go to upgrading shuffleboard courts. Where's that?
That is the Sheridan Township, their portion that they are donating to the city of Albion, so that will cover the cost on that. We will work with Sheridan Township to identify what the actual cost will be. Their allocation amount is much smaller than the city's, so we may have to use some of our remaining parks millage to kind of help either complete that project, but that has not been yet provided by the township.
So are you saying where are the shuffleboards
Oh,
actually at? Where are they located?
yeah, they're over by Reader Park.
So what's the name of that road?
Where the carnival is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. You can see them right off of the road.
And yeah, they are in pretty bad condition, and I know we've had several requests in the past to get those courts updated, so this will be a nice project to have completed, and we thank the township for foregoing their allocation amount to a project in the city of Albion.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for city manager there? So the tennis courts that we're talking about, we only have the 2 tennis courts in Victor, or other tennis courts.
At Weston Hall.
Where?
Behind Weston Hall.
That's not city, so.
I think that's only in, no, I think that's it in Victor Park.
We just got the
Is that true?
2,
Any in-
correct?
Oh, yeah.
So we don't have none in Highland Park no more? Tennis court?
No,
I don't know if any of the basketball courts can be tennis courts.
It's possible they
It's
can be
possible,
converted,
I don't
but
know.
the basketball courts will be included in the upgrades of the other courts.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. All right. Next is our discussion of city council districts. So, Patrice, did you want to? Or Mayor Pro Tem Jackson, do you want to lead the discussion?
And he had the questions that's been going, so he can go forth with them.
So, I mean, I'll just keep it brief, so I think it's important for, and I was telling Councilwoman Jackson this, I think it's important to, because there's a lot of terms as it relates to redistricting that I think people are confusing, and so I want to be clear that the redistricting for the city precincts is not related to like the redistricting that the state is doing with the commission that they currently have in place. Those are totally different things. What the city has to do is, after a certain period of time after the census, is basically the Home Rule City Act has a provision that says the city should look at its districts to make sure that they're relatively equal. You know, obviously no precinct is going to be exactly equal, but you try to get them close so that the populations are relatively equal. What it says is we can't do it until at least 4 months after the official results are out, but we have to do it before the next general election. So here's where the little stickety wicket comes into play. Our next general election isn't until this fall, but because of administrative regulations that the Secretary of State had, or I'm sorry, is the Bureau of Elections, while the election itself isn't until August, technically we need to have that information to the state by April 4th. So fortunately, your city attorney has no life because his wife is studying for the bar. And so while she's miserable, I decided to make myself miserable. And I took it upon myself to pull all the census data for every census block in the city and tabulate it together. And the manager and I are going to go through it again. It's very labor intensive, but we've narrowed it so that we're accurate within less than 0.5%. And we're going to try to get that to perfect. Right now, it's looking like the precincts that are population heavy, so to speak, are precinct 3 and precinct 1 are the ones that are probably the furthest off. The lowest being precinct 6 and followed by precinct 4. So the adjustment, they're not huge adjustments, but there will have to be some adjustments. So the plan is this. The manager and I are going to meet, we're going to go over the numbers again, and then we're going to propose new district lines to try to make those a little bit more equal to what they should be, and have those for the council to hopefully start voting on the first meeting in March, so that you'll have it adopted in time so that we can get it to the state by April.
Questions or yes, Councilman Muller?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. So, one thing I have noticed, and throughout the years of walking door to door, getting information out in my precinct, which is 4, we have lost at least like I have at least 100, pieces of property that, people don't live in anymore. So will that mean I will gain people, with this new redistricting?
Yeah, assuming that, so like I said, the manager and I are gonna go through it again, but right now, your number's sitting right around 1,227 for people, and that's the second lowest. So in contrast, precinct 3 is at 1,400. So yours doesn't, precinct 4 does not connect with precinct 3, so we can't peel some off there, but what we'll do is we'll adjust some of the boundaries, and we may peel some off from, say, precinct 1, which is also a little top heavy, and try to give you some of those voters, and then we'll adjust the other precincts. But short answer is yes, you should gain some people.
Okay.
And, yeah, Councilman Williams.
I got a question about the drawing of the line.
Yeah.
Addition. Are there groups that do this, like professional organizations?
The short answer to your question is I don't know. There could be. But I guess what I would say is what I would envision is them doing it for much larger cities than our own. We have a fairly small city and only 6 precincts, so it shouldn't be a very complicated thing for us to do, especially since I've already gone through and pulled all the data, and I have it broken down by census block, so we could say in the census tract for this block, there are this many people in precinct 1 in this block versus, over here in precinct 2. So really, we just need to just adjust the boundary to include blocks or remove blocks and even it out so that it's relatively close. I mean, hypothetically, you could go and hire a third party to do it, but quite frankly, I don't think you have time to do it to get the stuff to the state by the 4th. I mean, you could be compliant with the statute to adopt it before your next general election, but it won't apply to this next general election because it has to be there by April 4th. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you remember, Colin was working on this on Saturday, you were at 200 and some kind of odd numbers, and now you're down to.
So the first time I did it, and it is I will say, God bless the census department and all the wonderful data they have, but it's very complicated. The first time I went through, I was missing roughly 600 and change. On Saturday, I narrowed that down to 300, and then I just got really motivated this weekend, and now I'm within 27 people. So the problem is, probably the most complicated precinct in the city is, well, it's a split between precinct 5 and precinct 2, because what they do in the census is not only have little census blocks throughout the city, but they're also all in different tracts. So precincts 2 and 5 are split between 3 and 4 different tracts. So when you pull the data, you have to switch it every time. Like, okay, this is tract 33, these blocks. This one's tract 34, these blocks. So that's why it's taken me some time to go back through and make sure we got them all. But we're down to 27 people, which is less than 0.5% of the population in the city. So pretty much a margin of error at this point.
So basically, he's been going block by block to get the number of folks.
And when she says block, it's census block, not city block.
Oh,
So.
So Colin's doing his due diligence to get us the correct information before they kind of pull together to figure out how to do this.
Yes, and so the managers already had the maps printed on large scale so that we're not trying to read the census numbers off of a 15-inch computer screen. And so we're gonna go through them again to make sure we've got all the blocks and all the tracks and all the precincts, and then from there, we'll just make sure what precincts need the adjustments. Like I said, I mean, right now, precinct 3 is the one that's the most top heavy. And then we'll bring them to council and we'll show you how we've adjusted the numbers and answer any questions you might have, and hopefully you'll be able to vote on them and approve them in March.
So with a little council help, we don't need any consultant help or anything, you guys really have it.
Now that, that Attorney Harkness has done everything, pretty much he's done the bulk of the work by identifying the individual census within each precinct. So we will go back through with our large maps, make sure that we are accurate with our numbers, and that honestly is the bulk of the work, identifying the population within each precinct. And then we'll be able to adjust the boundary lines per precinct. We do have an intern with Albion College who is working with our GIS equipment. So once we get our numbers finalized, they will then be able to help us utilize that software to make sure that we are adjusting the boundaries most accurately.
Councilwoman Knight.
Thank you, Mayor Snyder. Thank you, Attorney Harkness, for the hard work. I'm curious with like you being a lot closer, would it be possible when those recommendations are ready, we could receive those, like, I'm assuming in advance of the meeting, if that's possible?
Sure.
Just so we can have as much time as possible to digest the information.
Sure. Shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for all that hard work.
Thank you for answering the question and doing your due diligence as I asked.
Sure thing.
Thank you so much.
All right, future agenda items. Anything you would like to have on agenda for upcoming meetings? Mayor Pro Tem Jackson?
I'm sorry to say it closer. We were gonna bring back, we was going to bring back out about if we were going to, okay, the dollar amount for cleaning the streets. For the, we pick up
Citywide.
citywide, we pick up, we're gonna put that back on, so we didn't want to.
And specifically the equipment,
Yes.
the equipment that Director Miller.
Spoke about.
Yeah.
Gives me time to so.
Council, if you recall back, and I don't know when it was, either late summer, early fall, Director Arnold did present you all with a mobile food truck ordinance with spring and summer months approaching, and I know there are many festivals coming up that people would like to utilize mobile food trucks. You guys tabled it at one point, so I was just, we would like to get something formally approved. Just wondering if we can bring that at the next future.
Councilman Williamson.
When we table it, what we had made clear is we wanted some changes brought to it, specifically based on where they can park with the brick and mortar buildings, like not being able to park in front of brick and mortar restaurants with your food truck, because the rules were kind of lax. I remember this because I was the one who was like, you need to take a look at this. So it's like, we're ready for it to come back. I think with some of the modifications we had all talked about around location of where you can park the food truck in relation to a brick and mortar business restaurant. So
With that, I just would like a clarification, I guess, from Attorney Harkness, because that ordinance has already been approved by the planning commission with those already in place. Would that have to go back before planning for their approval before we bring that back to city council?
You don't have to approve it exactly how planning commission
Okay.
presents it. I mean, you can always opt, to amend their recommendation or, adopt something slightly different. I can't, I have to go back and look at the draft that I don't have access to on my computer here if those modifications. I'm sure if the modifications were requested by council, we would have put them in, but.
Well, at the planning commission, we did vote at the way it was written. We brought it to council. Council wanted to revisit where vendors could park. So does that need to go, like we were saying, does it need to go back to planning commission to have them approve that, or can we just make that adjustment and get it approved? Because we do have a planning commission meeting coming up next week.
Yeah, thanks.
Next week, yeah.
Yeah, it's off.
Yeah. So, we can bring that back up, but I don't know if that's the proper procedure.
I'm checking right now.
Just, I think Colin has it right, if he's gonna check that, that's fine, that you don't have to, they don't have the legislative power, you do. I guess it's the easy way to say that. Secondly, I remember it being tabled, but I wasn't given any direction beyond that specifically on what changes. I understand like the essence of the changes, but I guess if that, I'd be happy to make those if you can get them to me in writing.
Okay. Councilman Williamson, can you get that?
Well, hey, I want a food truck to park downtown at some point, I just want to make sure everybody knows it.
But also I want to revisit, and I don't know, with the social districting, do we need to get that finalized with planning commission or?
That's
DDA.
still with the DDA, I think that falls in my court.
We definitely want to get moving on that too, for the same reasons.
What was that again? Social district?
Social districting.
Being that we were speaking about equipment earlier, did we look back into the snow removal vehicles, the plow trucks? I know, I think before the discussion was that they didn't, they weren't available. They were on like back order or something, were available to purchase.
For large plow trucks?
Yeah,
Yes, I can follow up with Director Miller on where the availability right now, there's kind of a shortage on all equipment and especially vehicles, kind of across the country, but I will have them look into that again.
Any other items? Okay. Public comments, do we have anybody here for public comment?
Can you hear me?
Floor is yours.
Okay, Garrett Brown, 1016 South Superior Street. I'm usually not this frank, but I'm gonna be very frank. I'm very, very, very disappointed in the attorney's representation of the redistricting or the reapportionment thing. Because when I first reached out to the clerk, and I called the Bureau of Elections because I myself was very curious about this. I did get the April 4th deadline for precincts, which are the voting districts. But in terms of wards, which are really what the council districts are, the city council does get to draw those. But the concern I'm having is it shouldn't take a council member or a citizen coming to prompt the attorney to do something that he should know about, because this is a big deal. The census happens every 10 years. And the concern I have with, because there were some questions asked about, could the council consult someone outside of the city to help you redraw the lines? You can contact MML. I'm sure there's somebody who can, even if the attorney at the MML could recommend facilitators or attorneys to help do that. And I think to say that you all should settle for the manager and attorney drawing the lines because the attorney has failed to notify you in time. Yes, the census was delayed, but that data was released last year. So you can't claim a time crunch because the attorney failed to do his job and notify you of that. The other problem here is a political problem. So basically what you're doing, and the attorney's not really being clear in explaining this to you, is you are allowing the manager and the attorney to basically, if they draw the lines, to determine who will vote for you, right? Because when the population changes, the lines have to change. And whether someone's in precinct 3 or 2, 1 or 5, 6 or 4, if the council has to make that decision shouldn't be handed off to employees of the council who might have an interest in who you represent, right? Because if they change the lines, people win in Albion by 5 votes. The mayor won by 5 votes, right? So if you are giving them the power to draw the lines and they work for you and they may have an interest on whether you're on the council or not, that's not politically sound. It'd be much wiser if you did pay the money, because again, Albion's not Detroit, it's not Battle Creek, it's a small community. You all spent $5,000 to prosecute the former mayor pro tem. I'm sure we could spend that money to have a professional come in and help you all draw these lines that are going to be in place for the next 10 years. So I'm really disappointed in Cullen. This is not good lawyering and legal representation to not be on top of this because it's such a big deal and it has such a major impact on the political life of our community.
Comments?
Hello, can you hear me?
Here again, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Sonia Brown, 713 Orchard Drive. You know, I wanted to bring up the cameras that Chief Kipp presented on tonight. and had I known this, I would have commented earlier, but the issue that I heard in that discussion was the night vision, that the new cameras wouldn't have night vision. And I remember back in 2019, Councilmember Lawler and I, we went in to view the body cam footage of the beating of the Black child by the police officer. And in viewing that video, we had a whole discussion about night vision cameras. And I asked what the policy was because what Kipp shared was that some officers prefer them and some officers don't. And I thought, you know, wow, what's the policy on that? Because you're going to do something, you know, it needs to be uniform across the department. And the officer's video that took that was used in the news and the media to show that what happened in that beating incident, that officer had night vision on his camera. And I think night vision is important. I heard what Kipp said. He wants people to see what the officers see, but I don't. If the officers are doing what they're supposed to do, there should be no reason night vision, you know, shouldn't be a priority. And hopefully by now a policy. And then really quickly, yeah, I gotta agree with Garrett's comments, Cullen, because I heard Cullen say this is what we're going to do. But as a city attorney, he doesn't get to make that choice. This is a council decision. So for him to say, me and the city manager are gonna draw the lines and bring them back to you, and we don't have time to consult with anybody else because there's an April deadline, it is nobody's fault but your own, Cullen, that the deadline is approaching and it's just being brought to council. So that's my 2 cents. Y'all have a good night.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Again, Commissioner Tompkins, floor is yours.
All right, good evening, everybody. Gary Tompkins, your Calhoun County Commissioner. Certainly great to be with you folks this evening. I'll just be very brief this evening, just with a couple of notes. At our organizational meeting this past January, I was honored to be reelected as the Vice Chair of the Calhoun County Board of Commissioners from my colleagues. Certainly honored to be able to continue in that position, certainly with a seat at the table, which was appreciated. We also set our meeting schedule for 2022, which is the first and third Thursdays of the month at 7 o'clock at the Marshall County Building, with the exception of April and July, where there is only one meeting for each month. On the senior millage front, I might have already spoke to this before, but the committee unanimously approved the increase in the income level limit to 250% of poverty for 2022 to help rebuild seniors being served. This change is for all programs that are income tested. These programs include minor home repair, ramps, hearing, personal emergency response system. It's really important. I know a lot of folks are what I've been able to tell seniors is, don't let pride stand in your way. Take advantage of the opportunity, because as we all do in Calhoun County, we pay on our property taxes for this millage, and it accounts to about $3 million a year. And we want to make sure that we can get as many services out to seniors as we can. Certainly, if you know a senior that's right on the cusp and maybe needs some help, don't hesitate to have them call the Calhoun County Senior Office and get some help that they truly need. Also on the countywide internet, our high-speed internet broadband task force met February 3rd. We discussed the upcoming release of the merit survey that many of you filled out and the results that will be unveiled at the February 17th County Commission meeting. We feel it's probably going to see exactly what we think it's going to see in terms of The fact is that we either have the internet, it's very slow, or we don't have any internet at all. So again, very much looking forward to that. My monthly newsletter, most of you folks get my monthly newsletter, and if you don't, if you'd like to sign up, certainly email me at Tompkins, TOMPKINS, cc7@gmail.com. Or you can even get on Facebook and follow me on Facebook as well. In the newsletter this month, I highlight the very thing that you folks were talking about here just recently, is I detailed the recent finalized redistricting maps for not only the federal congressional level, but also the state Senate, our state House, and the county commission, and all of which impacts in what areas specifically impact the east side of Calhoun County and out in the city of Albion. And what you'll find is that especially in the Senate, we're all gonna have to be voicing ourselves at a very high pace, because we're no longer gonna be the big fish in the pond anymore, that we're gonna be much smaller, and our voice is really gonna have to carry. So again, it gives you a very detailed look to see exactly what those districts comprise of and how they impact the city of Albion. So with that being said, it's great to be with you folks as always, and don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need anything. I'm certainly here to serve you. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Yes, Commissioner Tompkins.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Anybody else on? City manager report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. An original report was included in the packet, however, there were some things to update, so I did send to you all an updated copy electronically. You have a copy at your desk. So the wastewater treatment plant USDA RD application. So the city of Albion received the official loan improvement documents from USDA RD for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades project. Great way to start the year. A meeting with city administration, USDA representatives, project engineer, and the city's bond council will be scheduled. We actually will be meeting this Thursday to discuss the next steps in the process. I believe the next step, we do have to issue a formal notice informing our residents on the bonds that we will be moving forward to fund these projects. So please, I will stay tuned for more information. I mentioned this during our study session. The Planning Commission held their regular January meeting on Wednesday, January 19th. The commission discussed the expansion of the city's marijuana overlay district. The Planning Commission made a motion to place the expansion of the marijuana overlay district on a future agenda with all proper notices in place for action decision. The Transportation Asset Management Plan, Wyden and Associates has prepared a draft project plan showing the effects of the proposed 6-month increase over 6 years. So beginning in 2023 through 2028. City administration received the draft plan on Friday, January 28th. Director Miller and I will be meeting this week to review and discuss further. I would recommend that a study session be scheduled with the city council to review the draft plan and discuss the next steps. Just want to remind council that if we are going to move forward with an additional road millage, we will have to take that to the voters to get their final approval. So please stay tuned for more information on that. The 2022 Albion Economic Forecast, the EDC will be hosting the 2022 Economic Forecast on March 3rd, 2022 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. via Zoom webinar. I believe pre-registration is required, so I will make sure that that is provided to you all and posted on the city's website so residents have that information if they are interested in attending. The City of Albion, the EDC, Albion College, DBA, Huntington Bank, and WE Upjohn Institute will all be participating in the event. This is your chance to kind of find out what some of the projects are upcoming for year 2022 and get an update on just economic forecasting for City of Albion. City recreation services. So as you're aware, we have entered into a 1-year agreement with the Battle Creek YMCA. However, I have received several requests from different organizations within the community to provide recreation services on the City of Albion. I think to make this a smooth process, I will be drafting and releasing a formal request for proposals for recreation programs within the next week. So any organization that is interested on providing those recreation services, they can respond to the request for proposals. I will then bring that to City Council to your attention for you guys to make that final approval. The MEDC Revitalization and Placemaking Program, or RAP. So the City of Albion is in the process of applying for funding through the MEDC's Revitalization and Placemaking Program. It's an incredible opportunity for the city to apply for and take advantage of $20 million that has been allocated to Calhoun, Battle Creek, Albion, and Van Buren. These are the communities that have qualified census tax, which are the priority of the program. And the initial meeting was held with the city, EDC and Albion Community Foundation. The DDA and Albion Chamber were also invited, but they were unable to attend. We met on Monday, January 24th to discuss potential projects for the program. The entities are working together to create a pipeline of projects that potentially utilize these funding sources. Actually, I attended a webinar this afternoon that provided more information on this program. These are federal ARPA dollars, which comes with a lot of federal restrictions to them. They're working on rolling out the online portal. And so they encourage collaborations with organizations within your community. So we will be working together with the entities that I listed, as well as the Calhoun County Land Bank, to identify projects within our community that we can take advantage of these RAP dollars. So it's, like I said, it's a very incredible opportunity for our city to kind of make an impact here. So please stay tuned for more information. If awarded, we have until 2024 to allocate the funds, and then all funds must be expensed by 2026. For countywide transit, the countywide transit steering committee would like to present the details of a countywide transit system to the Albion City Council. This committee will present before you all at the April 18th regular city council meeting. So again, we are moving steps closer to possibly implementing a countywide transit system, which we all know transportation is a dire need within our community, but also countywide also. So please I look forward to that presentation on April 18th. And then the Community Heart and Soul Grant Program. So the City of Albion, we're in the process of researching and applying to the Community Heart and Soul Grant Program. It is a resident-driven process that engages the entire population of the town to identify what they love most about their community, future wants, and how to achieve it. So instead of the City of Albion paying to bring an outside consulting firm in to help us with community engagement, this program will allow us to train and be able to do that kind of services ourselves. A lot of times we bring someone in, do all of this, and then they leave. However, community leaders and residents, when we're trained, we're able to engage with each other and then follow through with making sure those projects come to life. So it's a very exciting program that we should be taking advantage of, and stay tuned for more information on that. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions for City Manager Slater? All right.
Actually, I have one question.
Yeah, Councilwoman Liz.
About the NEDC grant. Have any projects been identified? Because I know typically there's like a standing kind of needs and awareness, and I'm just curious if there's been any general understanding. Those are large dollar amounts.
They are not at this time. We had to just discuss possibilities, but like I said, the land bank, the DDA, and the chamber, they were not able to attend that meeting, so we will be meeting again as a group to kind of narrow it down to really identify projects that we can take advantage of. The web portal will be available. They said they're still working on getting it rolled out. Will be available come March, so we have until then to truly identify some good projects that we could take advantage of. But they really did stress in the webinar this afternoon collaboration. So it's very important for, I guess you will receive a higher rating if you're able to demonstrate different projects that you can collaborate with different organizations. And we did discuss a few at the initial meeting, but I think having the other entities join in will really be able to identify some good projects that we could take advantage of.
One follow-up question. Because I looked through their website just very shortly. Is this anything related to like the capital improvements plan type of projects? I know placemaking is typically not infrastructure, but I saw infrastructure was on.
It's kind of geared towards like COVID recovery. Still, so some of the projects we discussed, Plaza enhancements, further enhancements to the train depot to kind of turn that into the new chamber building to where that would be the hub for our tourist location. We also discussed enhancements of North Eaton Street, McDonald, I like to call it McDonald Road, to kind of enhance that area. We're located off of a major interstate highway, and I think we're missing the boat somewhere because we do not have a lot of development along that corridor for some reason. So we discussed kind of making that more attractive location for developers to come into. We discussed possibly expanding Beamer Street with the new gated community out there. We had a meeting with them. They're looking to expand their project and, bring even more community homes within that gated community. So expanding that, giving them additional access would help that area grow as well. And I was going to, Councilmember Londa, I know that was a question that you had to interim, College President Calvaruso. If you have residents who are interested in purchasing a home, they have a lot of homes available within that gated community that start range in like the $70,000 to $80,000 amount, and those are homes that you can purchase. So I would encourage any residents to look into the Wildflower gated community.
Councilman Williams. I'm sorry.
I just, with regard to the Wildflower, is, I'm trying to understand that process. You don't own the land, you just own the building. Is that how it works?
Yes, I believe you own the actual house that's within that community.
Okay, thank you.
And they're looking to have a community center built and really expand what they're doing with that gated
Do
community.
you, sorry, one more question. Do you know how many people are there now?
I don't, but
Okay, I'm just curious how that's coming.
Councilman Williams.
Yes, okay, the MEDC revitalization and placemaking program, was this something that as a municipality, we get the funding for?
Yeah, so we would have to, the city of Albion would apply for this funding, but we would be working in collaborations with other entities to kind of build our application.
Okay, when choosing projects, I understand that beautifying the community and landscaping and things like that may seem as though it's a dire concern for the community, but I think there's more beneficial projects that we can partake in that would actually bring value to the stakeholders in the community. I know housing, not homes, in the case of Councilwoman Waller, what she was speaking about, but housing for single tenants is an issue here in our community. And I feel like we may be facing we may be facing people leaving the community in order to find housing where they won't be able to find it here.
I totally hear your concern, and I appreciate that. However, like I said, these are federal ARPA dollars, so they have it's very restricted on the types of projects that are eligible for.
Right, I understand.
I believe with this program, they hit on corridor development and then placemaking, such as beautification projects to enhance the community. I will revisit to see if housing development is an eligible expense for this project. But like I said, I have identified the current projects based off of the requirements for this program.
Okay, well, my initial statement may be outside of the parameters for this. But when I looked it up, what I saw was something that would maybe allow for projects that could be more, like I said, substantial in the community. Maybe if we as a council could view the actual grant and what's entailed, we could maybe have better suggestions as to a useful need for something that will be more constructively used in the community.
Yep, I'm happy to provide you to the link so you can take a look at what that program is, but that is why we're partnering with different organizations to identify the best projects for our community to obtain some of these dollars.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just have one more because you put it on me. I was thinking with regard to Councilmember Williams and I, having ideas and feedback and different things, perhaps we could maybe be involved in some of the planning so that you don't have to, just have more input from our perspectives as council members.
I could, if anyone's interested in attending, please send me an email, I can make sure.
Okay.
Just have to be mindful because we do have a few council members who are I guess for.
We can make it a
I
public
don't know
meeting.
how that would, because yes, I know Mayor, Pro Tem, she is currently the chair for DDA. Councilmember Williamson is with the
Yeah.
commission, but yes.
In terms of the meetings at large, I know there's probably not as much, but in whatever way we can contribute.
Yeah, I'm, like I said, I'm
in
happy
the
to send
build
out
out
the link,
process.
you guys can
Yeah.
review and provide any feedback that you see as necessary.
So can we make it a public meeting? Did we think this? Like,
I mean, you can make- you can-
Councilmember Williams was asking.
You can make anything a public meeting as long as you, I mean, realistically, the hallmark of a public meeting is posting it and allowing the public comment. So as long as you post it as a meeting and somebody's taking minutes and we allow for public comment, you're good to go.
Okay.
Thank you, City Manager.
Councilmember.
I participated in the last meeting. The other thing, I think, there's a lot of information out there, and so you didn't miss much, but one of the things you have to remember is this is downtown corridor, census tract focused dollars, so there's a limited geography in which it can be placed. Although down in your precinct sits squarely in that geography, because of the census tract data that we have. So all of the improvements that are taking place in precinct 1 right now are eligible for match money through this program. The other piece that I don't think was quite clear, City Manager Snyder, so help me if I'm wrong, it's the EDC and it's also the Southwest Michigan first. There's a consortium of the Southwest, South Central Michigan that is going after a large pot of this money.
And divide it up.
And then, yeah, so we're coming up with our pipeline here. Kalamazoo is coming up with their pipeline, Porter's coming, there's a group of folks that are coming up with their pipelines so that we can hopefully get a huge amount of money. And then what this group is doing is trying to prioritize, okay, so if we get X amount of dollars, how, like, what are the priority projects, who has match money, who has, things like that. So I'm glad that you want to participate. And I think if you could make it an open meeting, I think that would be fantastic for just because somebody that's wears so many hats. It's also really good for people on council to learn how the sausage is made in these organizations. So this is how the EDC does development. This is how the Community Foundation seeks out projects to do work in the community. This is exactly how the DDA works to get those downtown development projects. So I think I welcome any of it. The other thing we might have to recognize is at some point, as in most development work, sometimes these things aren't supposed to be as public as they are. And so some of us might have to take turns going in and out to have this conversation, similar to like what Project Tiger was for the EDC a couple of years back. So because when you're trying to attract large development and do big projects, it can't always just be out loud, hey, look over here, we're gonna put in a big Target factory or whatever, what Marshall's going through right now with some big mega site development. Everyone thinks it's gonna be Amazon or something, so everyone's guessing what it's gonna be. So I think this is great. I'm really glad that you're bringing this up and sharing with council. I'm hoping that Councilmember Williams and Councilmember Lanu and all the rest of the council members participate at some point in the dialogue. I'd also like to encourage everyone to go directly to the DDA or to the EDC about their ideas for projects in the community. I think one of the things that happened during this meeting is we realized that, we had a pandemic, everything kind of shut down, and we didn't have a laundry list of projects that we were ready to go with. And so we sat around the table, and while we did come up with some ideas, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we just didn't have shovel-ready projects. Like, oh, yep, right here, Stauffer Plaza, this is the plan for Stauffer Plaza, and here's the plan for the corridor development on Eaton Street. And so, continuing to communicate with our boards and commissions about your ideas and giving them the spark to be excited about their service and bring projects forward will be really, really helpful. We're gonna need a lot of that energy as we try to get that money. I just got dinged. Well, thanks. So anyway, thank you for that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
But something I was just gonna add, some of you probably understand how these things work, where in order to be competitive, because like we were saying, we are just one of a possible entity to go towards these funds. And to be competitive to get these funds, you have to have things already kind of in place. You have to know how much it's gonna cost, how long it's gonna take, all this stuff. And so that's why Shane says shovel-ready product or things, because shovel-ready means you already know what it's gonna take to get it done.
Right.
So those are the things, and those are the numbers, when you apply for these type of funds, you have to have forward.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the care and concern that you guys take with my possible naivety. Me being young on council, but when something comes across and I see it, and I have to look further into it to make sure that we do accomplish something in the community that's not just putting makeup on a pig. Thank you.
Okay, I'm lost track where we were into that. Council member comments? Okay. Nope, Councilwoman.
So, thank you, Ms. Mayor. So in commenting on the, redistricting, and I'm just gonna ask a question here. Is it possible to do a work session, with this council to see, how this is being done and how it goes? I think it'll be at least for me, a learning experience to see how it's being done. And, is that possible? That's the number one thing. And, another thing is, even though we don't have we're trying to get our snowplow equipment all together, I think, and I just want to say out loud for the record that we did a really good job this time, how we got people off the streets. We gave them notice that, hey, in about 2 more days, y'all gotta be off the streets so we can get them clean. I thought it was perfect. And I just wanted to say, good job to our public works and our city manager, building your team together to get that done, because it was beautiful.
Thank you, I'll be sure to pass that on to them. They did work tirelessly.
Yeah, but I just wanted to know if we could do a work session for this redistricting to see how it's being done. And I think it'll be a learning experience, because it's just really something that I was like, well, I wonder how do they do that?
So, I would be happy to have a work session at some point before the council votes on it to explain how everything was arrived at and the process. Just so the council's aware, the last time redistricting was done, the city manager at the time, Mike Herman, drew the maps and brought them to council. I believe had to come back once or twice until council approved them. That's generally how it works. The council was not involved in the drafting of the lines. So I'd be happy to do that and share the data and how we tabulated the precinct blocks and everything. I just have to add, I'm not sure how certain members of the public came to the conclusion that somehow it's the city attorney's job to do the redistricting, but I want this council to know that because we found out that there was a timeline from the election board that we needed to meet, I took it upon myself to use my personal time to assist the city administration so that this could get done faster. And so I have to say I'm a little offended at some of the statements that were made today, but because I want council to know how this has been done in the past. And I took it upon myself to do the legwork so that we could expedite this for the city administration. So I'm happy to share whatever information the council wants. If the council wants to go outside and hire a third party, I'm not saying that you can't. The council makes absolutely the final decision on what these boundaries are going to be. The administration is just bringing it to you to show you, here's how we evened out the numbers and here's what the districts could look like. If you want to amend them, that's absolutely fine. I'm not trying to dictate anything to this council. I'm just trying to get something done for you. So
Would there be something we can do before a council meeting? Because I'm tired of myself.
sure.
Does the council think we will have enough time to actually see what goes on before a council meeting? Or do we need to take a Saturday?
Well, if I can just tell you, so realistically, and I wish I had a picture to show you, and I'm happy to show you after the council meeting. I can give you just a brief sample. There's 3 different maps from the census that the city falls on, and each one of those maps has separate census tracts. And within the census tracts are all these census blocks. And all those blocks comprise different parts of different precincts. And there's a certain number of people in each block. And so what we do is we pull the data from the census to say, okay, in precinct 3, in this tract, in this block, there's this many people. And basically we just add them up. And so then you get a total for each precinct. Now, when there are some precincts that are too far, you know,
I mean, I have to give Colin like a big thank you for this, because this is like over and above what the city attorney has to do.
I mean, I was just asking, was it?
no, yeah, so let me, and just bear with me for a moment so I can show you. So by way of example, I'll just use this one because this is the simplest one. This was, I think, page 16 or 11, because the big one is page 26. But so this one has precinct 3 and precinct 6 in it. And so the dotted boundary you see here is the precinct boundary, okay? And these tiny little red numbers are the census blocks. The 34 is a census tract. So you've got this whole tract, and within that tract, you've got census blocks. And so we pull the data from the census blocks within this is precinct 6. And we say, okay, within these 3 blocks, there's X number of people. And then we go to another map, and in this case, it'll be, this is page 26 from the census that has the rest of precinct 6 in it. And we pull the blocks from that census tract and we add those together. And so you come up with these totals for each thing. And that's how we'll show you, here's what's currently in each block. And then in terms of redistricting, so by way of example, if you've got an offset between, say, precinct 3 and precinct 6, you know, you can adjust the boundary line instead of being flush with, I think this is probably Superior Street. Instead of it being flush, you move it over a block. And that way you take people from precinct 3 and move them into 6 and equalize the population. So that's what we'll show you. You'll have the before, you'll have the after. You guys are the decision makers. We're just showing you how we're gonna, you know, probably the easiest way to equalize it. But what we've already got done is I've gone through every one of the precinct blocks on all 3 of these maps and pulled and compiled the data for all of them. Which is, it took about 6 hours, so.
I mean, you also have his legal pad with all the numbers.
Yeah.
For both of us.
I mean, I did.
No, not at all.
Okay, but I sit down on it and just look at how it was made. I said, this is all.
So,
One
and
jumped over to here that, I can't imagine.
I just want, you know, I mean, nobody knew that the election bureau had this April 4th cutoff. I mean, technically the statute says August before, or I'm sorry, your next general election, which is November. So, you know, I'll just leave it at that. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to share any info from you, but I don't think I'm just letting council know. I mean, I'm happy, you know, I like to think I have thick skin, but I'm screaming on the inside.
Yeah, that this was a little bit too much for you.
So I rarely take the opportunity to actually directly respond to a comment from the public comments, especially a negative one directed to myself or to any other member of council, but I'm gonna say this. On Saturday, we had a really great work session, probably one of the better work sessions that this council, the 7 of us have ever had together. And one of the things that we said on early on in the day when we were talking about difficult leadership situations was good leaders seek to unify, not divide. And tonight's public comments from Garrett Brown and Sonia Brown, you have to remember the aim and the focus and what they want out of that. Some meetings, Cullen is the best friend to the aim that they're taking with the viewpoint that they have. And tonight, he didn't give them the results that they personally wanted, because when you investigated how this issue got brought before council and the why they are so interested in it, it isn't just equality and equity in precincts. It's not. It is personal attacks on members of council. And the 7 of us sat in a room on Saturday and committed to working together, being transparent with one another, bringing issues to one another. And you know who wasn't there on Saturday? Garrett Brown. He was there the last time we were together, and that was awkward. And so I just want to remind everybody that we have all made commitments, and I take it serious. I know all of you take it serious, that we're not going to let these types of things divide the work that we're doing, because we are better unifying and coming together around making things happen for the city. We are having much more competent discussions about what we want. We're getting the feedback we want from commissions and department heads. We're starting to find our focus with each other and how we work. Heck, Miss Reed even said something nice about me at the last meeting, and I almost fell out of my chair. I was excited about that. So she's recalling, she shouldn't recall, but you did, you said something very nice about me. So I want everyone to remember the aim and the focus of the people who made those very negative comments tonight, because one thing I would like to ask them if I ever get to see them one-on-one is, are you tired yet? Are you tired of coming to city council week after week and seeking to divide this city and have more of these petty fights that keep us from getting the big achievements that we want? And, you know, if that means that my council precinct gets bigger and it's got to be more of a fight to stay in council, then so be it. That is a great thing. So I just want to thank everybody for all the work that we've been putting in over the last year together, and remind you all of the commitment we're making to one another to work together. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Snyder. I just had to say, as a council person for Precinct 5, having heard directly from Ed Haas this weekend about the carriage house, if anyone has a better update than I do, I was told it would be on today, and I'm waiting to follow up with the resident to confirm that, but I just wanted to say that my heart goes out to everyone who has been without heat for the last month. And I'm really hoping that what we've been working on and what we're moving toward is going to prevent anything like that from happening ever again. I also just want to say a shout out to not only the Department of Public Services, but the snow angels who have been helping people once the snow's plowed in their driveway and stuff. I've seen on Nextdoor that multiple people have just been blessed with people showing up and shoveling their snow for free. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that's a beautiful thing in our community, as well as thanking Sheridan Township for their generosity for our community. And then I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows next Wednesday, the 16th from 6:30 to 8 p.m., we're holding a visioning session for land use and development, so related to our concerns for like these grant dollars. Our 5-year comprehensive plan is being updated. And so right across the street at the Ludington Center, we can hear from residents and have that ability to discuss ideas and projects.
Will that meeting be on Zoom?
I do not know that there will be a virtual component.
But it is open to the public, and anyone, and all residents are welcome to come out and attend and provide their feedback. I don't know, Director Arnold, I know you're working on an update. Did you want to provide an update on the carriage homes, or?
I could, just in the interest of everyone's time, unless the mayor wants to have to do it, I'd be more than happy to stick around and just explain it to anyone who's interested.
Any other comments? So I know I typically go last, but I know we had some council members already sing the praises of our city works, street department. Myself, I was downtown and I heard from business owners how thankful they were that the streets got plowed, they stayed plowed, people were still able to get to the businesses, sidewalks, and the people were doing their, due diligence to get to the sidewalks. So there were so many people that were happy. I know we hear from the people who were not happy because their side roads didn't get plowed. I myself, didn't get plowed the next day, but that's okay. That's an expectation of living on a small road, and I understand that. So I appreciate you all, I'm sure, handling the calls and the emails from angry citizens that their roads haven't gotten touched, but I do know, like we've said before, we have a small team. Our city manager Snyder, Chief Kipp, Kevin and Director Miller, they were just all working so hard to make sure that the people in the community can get to what they needed to get to without having to be stranded. So we do, definitely appreciate everything that went into being able to handle the 2-day snowstorm that we experienced. But also to all of you for, doing your due diligence and communicating with your folks, making sure they were aware of what was going on. So we all did a great job in working with our town through this. Anything else? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? No. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Awesome. Meeting closed, 9:16 p.m. Okay.